Good evening, everybody here. It's great to see names, see some of you face to face here. I'm Dan Tater. As Stacey had mentioned, I'm the interim CEO of the iCenter, and it's really great to have you all with us. Max is going to talk a little bit more about the iCenter, but essentially our mission is to ensure that Israel education is vibrant, it's thoughtful, and meaningful in every learning space. And one of the ways that we do this is through something like Pulse of Israel, which is one of our newer and a signature curricular resource that really helps educators bring Israel's current conversations directly into the classroom. And this session was really born based on the comments and the conversations that we've had with the community. And it will take you behind the scenes of Pulse of Israel, and you'll see how its thematic modules that Max is going to share with you are how they're designed to spark curiosity, to spark critical thinking, and really genuine connection for learners of all ages. And with that, I'm very pleased to welcome and introduce my colleague, Max Pivo. He's our manager of partnerships. And Max has played a central role in creating this curriculum, and he works every day to connect people, programs, and possibilities across the landscape of Israel education. And he's going to be the one to guide us through today's exploration and share how you can bring Pulse of Israel to your own settings. And with that, Max, I pass it to you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate the introduction. So beautiful, well-worded, articulate. I know you're the right person for the job every time. Hi, everybody. For those of you I've had the chance to meet before, it's great to see you again. For those of you I haven't met before, it's great to meet you. For those of you who've interacted with the iCenter before, we're happy to have you back. And for those of you who are new here, welcome. As Dan mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the iCenter in general and what it is we do, and then we'll get into an actual experience of the Pulse of Israel and part of the curriculum. So the session I've loosely titled The Pulse of Israel, Replacing Exclamation Points with Question Marks. For those of you who have spent time around the iCenter, it's probably a sentiment that sounds familiar, maybe even the words themselves that have become sort of a mantra for us. The idea is that when engaging with Israel, when engaging in challenging, nuanced, complicated discourse about anything, but specifically in the world of Israel education, one of the values that we hold very dearly and as a foundational statement on what it means to do excellent Israel education is to replace exclamation points with question marks. And what we mean by that is a few different things. On the surface level, we don't want people shouting at each other. We don't want people ending their sentences with exclamations. We want people to open themselves to conversations with curiosity, to entangle themselves into complexity, to welcome discomfort. And that's what we mean by question marks, really putting questions above, on par with, in hand with answers, with conversation, with reality, with history. And that's a big inspiration for the Pulse of Israel curriculum, but we'll get there in just a second. Before I dive into the experience of the Pulse of Israel, I want to talk a little bit about the iCenter, just to give you an understanding of where this type of content is coming from in our educational philosophy. Our vision for the world, for the field, for our communities, for our country, for all different levels of engagement is that every Jewish young person develop a lifelong relationship both with Israel and Israelis. This is something that finds expression in all of our resource materials and also in our pedagogical style, our facilitation, how we really foreground relationships, relationship building, the dynamic between learner, educator, and content. And it's led us to a lot of really interesting places. We are present in day schools, summer camps, youth movements, public schools, private schools, really all across the board. Wherever it is, we are welcome and needed, which, to our credit and to the community's credit, has been in hundreds of different places, and we continue to grow those relationships. Like Dan mentioned, my title is manager of partnerships. That's what it is. It's a new title. And so I have really taken on a lot of the responsibility and the opportunity of growing, strengthening, and discovering those relationships. And so I very much expect and hope to continue this conversation after This webinar has long concluded with all of you individually, with your organizations, in order to bring the iCenter closer to what it is you do, and so that we can mutually benefit from each other's expertise. As the iCenter helped found the field of Israel education, really, it was guided by a central text of sorts that we call the alphabet of Israel education. The alphabet has our core principles, our why behind how we do Israel education, our approaches to content, the what, and the essential pedagogies, the how we actually do the act of educating, how we facilitate, what sort of scaffolding we use. And those three general buckets break down a lot further into these 12 pillars or foundational pieces. We have things like relating in relationships, going back to the iCenter's central directive that every young Jewish person develop a relationship. That word, relating in relationships with Israel and Israelis, is central to our educational philosophy and our practice. Things like modern Hebrew, arts and culture, being learner-centered in our work. All of these are the values, principles, and approaches to content that guide our practice. And so within this language, within this type of thinking, when it comes to doing the work of Israel education, we begin today in a place where I'm sure all of you expected to start this conversation. And of course, that is with the Pulse of Israel. The Pulse of Israel, like Dan mentioned, is our leading new curriculum for Israel education, and it's broken down into these 3 thematic modules. I'll tell you a little bit more about each of them as we go through and then give us a full tour of the landing page toward the end of the session, but I want to leave it a little bit unexplained for the moment. And so what I meant to say now was this is where we all expected to start, I'm sure, with the question of, is a hot dog a sandwich? A question that has roiled the minds of generations past and future. You would not be shocked by how emotional this discussion can and has become every time I've run this program with 12-year-olds, with 20-year-olds, and with 70-year-olds. It does not matter the demographic. People care about this question, and so we all should too today. What we're going to do in just a minute, Dan is going to break us into 2 breakout rooms. One breakout room number 1, as it is numbered, will be providing evidence for why a hot dog is a sandwich. So if you find yourself assigned to group 1, room 1, you are arguing in the positive. A hot dog is most definitely a sandwich. If you find yourself assigned to room 2, you'll be arguing in the negative. A hot dog, not a sandwich, doesn't cut it. And these are the ways that I want you to construct your argument as a group. I'll drop these prompts in the chat, or Dan can if you have a moment. Look at these 4 things. List the characteristics of a sandwich. What are the essential properties, qualities? What makes a sandwich a sandwich? List some examples of sandwiches. How many can you think of? I'll give bonus points to whichever group can think of the most. List some non-examples of sandwiches. This can be a little confusing. Examples of things that are not sandwiches, that according to your group's definition of what a sandwich is, do not comply. And then finally, a basic definition of a sandwich in your own words. I don't want Merriam-Webster. I'll know if you did because I've read the definition of a sandwich on there far too many times at this point. Come up with your own definition as a group in your own words. These are the 4 guiding points to lead your exploration. We're going to have probably about 7 minutes, maybe a little less, in our 2 breakout rooms. Again, room 1, you're arguing a hot dog is a sandwich. Room 2, a hot dog is not a sandwich. Do your most thorough work, and we will resume with a court session when we return. Welcome back. I'm sure you all had a stimulating conversation, and I cannot wait to hear the results. Let's dive right into it. Group 1, could you tell us a little bit about your argument for why a hot dog is a sandwich?
I can speak. We felt that we had the easier assignment here. Hi, everyone. I'm Noah. And I was on team hot dog is a sandwich. Our final definition basically went down to it needs to be something that is handheld that has 3 pieces to it, and like 2 outside pieces, and then that are holding something in the middle. We went back and forth whether it needed to necessarily be bread, but we'll leave that for another time. But yeah, so we were talking about all the different types of sandwiches and what, like a sandwich hug, or a kid who's considered like a sandwich, child, or, the classic sandwiches that we know, or even talked about like a pizza. Is that considered a sandwich? So we were, I think the iCenter should move from the hot dog to the pizza question, but we'll talk about that later. So that was, anyone else in my group is welcome to chime in, but at the end of it, that was where we got to.
Excellent. Very interesting points. I'll say just from the outset, the idea that you had the easier argument, I find very interesting. And I question whether that's something of a psychological tactic to make group 2 get a little bit nervous about having to defend their position. And I wonder, your statement that it's, 2 pieces and something in it, you consider the bun, even when connected, to be 2 pieces?
2 sides. There's two sides holding something in the middle.
See.
But we also talked about open-faced sandwiches that, it didn't necessarily have to be 2, but it's the concept that something is being held in there.
Okay.
And it's open because it's missing that other part that, like, we refer to as open, because it is missing that third element to it.
I see. Okay. All right. Do you have any examples of sandwiches or non-examples you'd like to share?
So we were starting to get into the conversation of the pizza, of is that a sandwich or not?
Yeah. I often get the question of, Pop-Tart, is it a ravioli? Maybe. Up for debate.
It's a sweet ravioli. Yeah. I don't know. Did we? Anyone else in my group want to chime in as to other examples we were talking about?
The example was brought also for someone maybe who's gluten-free and grills 2 portobello mushroom caps and uses that as bread, right? You can have the example also of like a peanut butter sandwich on rice cakes instead of bread, right? And the idea that it's really something that's the mainstay being held together on 2 sides.
Well said. Group 2, the group with maybe the harder argument to make. Let's see. What did you come up with?
So we went with a close reading, a Pshat reading of the idea that a hot dog is a hot dog. It does not necessarily need to be sandwiched between any kind of food matter. We define sandwich as some food matter in between 2 other pieces of food matter, or at least 2 other pieces of food matter. And I have had plenty of hot dogs that have not been sandwiched between any other food matter. I enjoy a hot dog right off the grill, just as a hot dog, eating it either with my hands or with a fork. So we went with a very technical reading of the question.
I like that. Words matter. The words we use in a question, in a conversation matter. And we'll talk more about that in just a little bit when we debrief some of this activity. But if you asked a 3rd grader to hand you a hot dog, they would probably just hand you a hot dog.
Exactly.
No bun needed.
Right. And we buy packages of hot dogs.
We do.
They don't come with other food matter.
Separate.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that is our argument.
Anything else to add from group 2? I'm going to disappoint all of you and just let you know I will not be making an official ruling on this case. It will take a jury of your peers years to decide what holds true, but I appreciate the arguments you both made, both very convincing, and every time I do this, and truly, people find something that I've never thought of before, and the idea of just the hot dog being the hot dog, I really enjoy.
The bigger question is popcorn a salad?
I'm not going to, Stacey, don't get us started on that. Used to entertain that. We only have 35
I believe
minutes.
It is.
We'll talk about that offline. The next thing we're going to do is a similar activity. We're going to break back into our breakout rooms, but this time into 3 rooms instead of 2. We're going to be discussing a similar question as I pull my slides back up. What I want you all to discuss in your breakout rooms this time is, what is a democracy? Replace hot dog with democracy. I want you to list the characteristics of a democracy, some examples, some non-examples, and a basic definition, again, in your own words. This time, you're not being given any sort of guidance for a side of an argument you fall on. We're just asking the question, what is a democracy? And these are the 4 prompts you'll use to make your case. So we'll head into our 3 breakout rooms and come back shortly. But when we move into democracy, when we move into Israel as a democracy, these are some serious conversations that can become quickly combative, explosive, and very challenging. And so to maintain a line of dialogue that is not exclamation points upon exclamation points, that is fueled and guided by questions and curiosity and authentic engagement, it starts with defining our terms. It starts with understanding what we're actually talking about when we say hot dog, what we actually mean when we say sandwich, when we say democracy, when we say constitution, because we have different lived experiences, cultural, personal, national, and otherwise, that inform the meaning we ascribe to words. The same word, phrase, or idea can have different meanings to different people. The word democracy means something different to an American than it does an Israeli. And that's not a bad thing, and that doesn't mean one of them is wrong, but we have to come to terms with the fact that we understand these concepts, these realities, differently from one another, and that a conversation that engages with difference will build strength. It won't end up in, if it's done in good faith, authentically, with the desire to have an honest and nuanced conversation, it will benefit its participants. And finally, what we know or believe, like Noah said, in the American context or the Israeli context, what we experienced influences what words we use to describe something and how we receive and understand what others say. As an American, hearing an Israeli speak about Israel as a democracy, it takes a different tone, because Israel's democracy does not perfectly one-to-one parallel America's democracy, nor does France's, nor does Germany's, nor does the UK's. They all have their own lived experiences and cultural standards that influence the meaning of the very words they use, the meaning that is suffused into them. And it's important to recognize and to sometimes explicitly address at the start of a conversation like this. Before we get into the next part, I want to do a bit of pulling back the curtain and reflection on what it is we just did to go from hot dogs to democracy to Israel. This is an approach that I call something along the lines of knocking on the box. I've told this story many times before, so if you've heard it, I apologize, but I like it. When I worked at an overnight summer camp as a unit head, during meals, one of the campers would often come up to the unit head table and sit with a cardboard box over his head. And I thought about how I'd seen other authority figures handle something like that, how they would take the box off, send him back to the table. If he does it again, establish a consequence, impose the consequence on the third time. Instead, what I chose to do, and what I think this approach to education writ large, and Israel education specifically embodies, is to knock on the box and to say, can I come in? To meet learners where they are, to speak their language and create passageways, create opportunities for engagement that are personal, that are meaningful, and accessible to our learners of all ages. Like I said, I've done this activity with 12-year-olds, with 20-year-olds, with 70-year-olds. And going from something that we can all very openly and relatively easily talk about, like a hot dog, like a sandwich, while impassioned and emotional, we can talk about that. And then we can take the educational scaffolding that we've developed in that conversation of defining our terms, of coming to understand how our lived experience, how our culture, how our identities inform our definitions, how they inform the words we use. We can then move into a conversation about democracy and do it again. And then, and only then, we can move into a conversation about Israel, as we do here. Looking back to January 2023 and the constitutional, judicial, reform, protests, riots, revolution, whatever you called this moment in Israel's history was a fundamental watershed moment in Israel's democracy. You can see in pictures here, Save Israel's Democracy. The top right here is a women's movement, Mavek Hanashim. Noah, do you have the translation for that for me? I forget it.
You said it right. It was the women's march of talking about like it says פגיעה בזכויות הנשים לא במשמרת שלנו. So attacking women's rights not on our watch.
Thank you. We have other examples from the LGBT community and from the cultural community of startups, of intellectuals, of people in the technology sector, who were all dealing with a moment of crisis in Israel's self-definition as a democracy. And we all sort of forgot about this because a lot of other really important and impactful stuff happened. But the question still remains, and it's an open question, as to what makes something a democracy, what it means that Israel is a democracy without a constitution. And I'm going to change my share here to show all of you the landing page from the larger Pulse of Israel curriculum. That first thematic module that I mentioned, where this activity is taken from, is called A Democracy Without a Constitution. And it breaks down into 3 subunits about basic laws, the Knesset and the government, and the Supreme Court. Within each of them, there's a resource page with an introduction, with activities, with media, with materials, with opportunities for discussion, historical documents, and there's also an FAQ attached to each one for an educational setting where you feel as though your learners or you are not in the position to start this conversation. We have some of the foundational questions already answered for you. We go from a constitution without a democracy to a people's army, talking about Haredim and the conscription, talking about the pipeline from the IDF, from the army to the political arena, how so many politicians are former members of the IDF, not just because almost everyone serves, but because there's something there, there's some sort of connection between the military and politics. And of course, women in the IDF and their evolving role over the course of Israel's history. The third thematic module, Shared Society Divided, gets into the complexion of Israel, immigration and integration, talking about the different ethnic and racial and religious communities that make up the state of Israel. People in protests, speaking about the nature of civic unrest and how central to Israel's identity it has been since 48. And Arab citizens of Israel, talking about a community that represents 21% of Israel's citizenry, and all too often is neglected, ignored, or entirely obfuscated. What the Pulse of Israel looks to do is to provide you all with your opportunity to knock on the box. What we want is for all of you to feel as though you can have these conversations. You can begin the exploration of something as complex and nuanced as democracy by knocking on the box, by starting the conversation somewhere where your learners, whoever they may be, wherever they may be, informal, formal, whatever the education looks like, can have a serious and nuanced conversation about something as impactful as the nature of democracy by starting with something that is accessible, personal, exciting, impassioned, all of these. And that's what the Pulse of Israel is rooted in. And I think you'll find, if you take the time to explore some of these thematic modules and the subsections therein, that there are opportunities to engage with our learners in ways that otherwise would elude us. Conversations that otherwise remain elusive and distant and taboo or stigmatized. This is our way in. So I encourage you all to explore it further. I saw Dan shared the link in the chat. We also have a lot more resources. The Pulse of Israel is one among many. Featured here are our camp resources, the amazing Israel race that takes us around Israel and around the world to experience culture and history, sites, people, educating in a new era, our collection of materials for education, Israel education post-October 7th. We have a lot of arts and culture, artwork for your space, music as an educational tool, design duty, artwork made in the wake of October 7th. All of these are those windows, those modes of connection, bridges to build between content and learner, and between content and educator for all of us. I encourage you all to explore them and to keep in touch. If you ever want to get in touch with anyone at the iCenter, our emails are our first name at the iCenter. You can reach me at Max at the iCenter, Dan at the iCenter, and anyone else, first name at the iCenter. We encourage you to make this an ongoing conversation. Like I said at the start, we want to be present in your professional spaces, wherever you are. We want to support one another. We want this to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And I hope that this is the start or the continuation for all of you. I want to thank you all for making the time to be here tonight. I know it's not easy to come to a semi-late night program like this, but it shows how dedicated and how involved all of you are in making Israel education as excellent as it can be for you, for your coworkers, for the field of Israel education, and for your learners. And so I'm deeply appreciative and grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll follow up by email, and just appreciate all of you making this time tonight. And we have another webinar next week with Mishi Harman, the podcast host of Israel Story. We hope you'll be able to join us for that. But we'll follow up by email and wish you all Laila Tov.
That's all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.